Well, good evening. My name is Steve Clark and I'm the Chair for Citizens for Direct Democracy. And at this time of the year, the City Council has to go through the budget process. And because one of our projects is to be a critic of Council and some of the things they're doing, of course we have analysed the budget and come up with some suggestions and recommendations and observations. But I was kind of interested to see this is the Mayor's message for 2019, and I thought it was kind of interesting, and this will feed into the budget. But one of the things that is said here is, I invite everyone to engage, debate, respectfully disagree and bring forward ideas on how to build our municipality together. Communication is a two-way street and we want to hear from you. Please see the back cover to see how you can contact members of Council. And you have to remember that this is the same group of people who wanted to take away the whole concept of due process for removing committee members and basically sink it to the depths of a secret tribunal, and you weren't allowed to know any of the information at all. And of course we have 6 outstanding freedom of information requests with the city that have been outstanding for well over a year now. And I found that with every committee that I've been on and every person I've spoken to who's been on the committee of the council, or even videos that I've taken, for example, of the library meeting, it stated that the city, it was felt that the city had already made a decision before the meeting was held. Okay, so the whole concept of transparency and public engagement is completely lost on the city, and yet they continue to delude themselves into believing that this is actually what is taking place. The other little thing that I thought was interesting, you see these 3 little things here. Okay, this is the increase in capital budget, 68%, operating costs reduced 3%, and contribution to reserves increased 30%. Well, they did a nice little trick here, as you will see, because the increase to the reserves was through borrowed money. So they actually borrowed money to make it look as if we have some kind of money in reserve, but we're paying interest on that, of course. And the capital budget was increased because it had to take on more debt, because money was bled out of the capital budget to reduce the operating cost by 3%. So there really was some shuffling going on here, and it's very, very misleading in the Mayor's message for 2019. It goes on to say, this will help to maintain an affordable lifestyle for residents while making sure we're looking after our assets. It also means we can build new amenities such as parks and recreational areas, continue to look after the environment and care for those in need. While we're selling off all our public property and our public lands to cover cost overruns on budget errors, and we seem to be closing down arenas, community centres and fire stations wherever we get the opportunity, and cutting back on services to the public. So anyway, I found this preamble here quite misleading, and of course the budget is also misleading, as you will see. And a big shout out goes to Peter Waygang, our secretary and our expert in this field, who has gone through the full document. Okay, and it's a tome. I'm going to leave the link below so that you can read it yourself, but it is a tome. It's heavy going. So thankfully Peter was able to do that. He has the kind of mind and eye that picks up all of these details, and so anyway, I hope you enjoy this narration that I'm going to do of our comments. Okay, so let's go to that, and I'll just have a quick wrap up when we finish. The City of Kawartha Lakes 2019 Budget Analysis and Commentary by Peter Waygang, Secretary, Citizens for Direct Democracy. I do not believe that councillors have the time or resources to analyse this 218-page document. Councillors should list the things that they want to know and stop buying the things that staff want to sell. The report would then be just a few pages and 100 times more useful. Council needs to question staff on every item to see that it provides a real service to the people. To that end, I made this document that I trust will provoke some thought and serious discussion. Reserves, the psychological sham. When a corporation has reserves, people believe that the corporation is acting wisely by putting away some income for a rainy day emergency. This was the situation before amalgamation, when the former municipalities had a net reserve of about $7 million. That money was spent by the amalgamated city to offset the prospect of an enormous increase in taxes. This administration has an enormous debt. It puts some of this debt money into reserves and then draws on these reserves as revenue. In simple terms, we have Peter robbing Paul to pay Peter. This is the most bizarre, outlandish method of accounting which goes on year after year. This, from a staff viewpoint, is much better than admitting that, once again, they have a serious fiscal management problem. On page 6, transfer to reserves, $19,692,000. This is debt money. Page 3, transfer from reserves, $2,248,000. While we are creating reserves from borrowed money, the interest on long-term debt debenture is $1,668,000. Page 6. The total debt owed by the city is never presented by staff. It is the single most important item in any budget since it determines the overall policy of the board, in this case the council. We should be repaying debt as fast as possible, not creating fictional reserves to fox council and citizens. It is a matter of fundamental transparency that all debts be presented by kind, magnitude and debt redemption contracts as the first item on the budget. This will set the whole tone of the detailed discussions. Council should insist that this be done. Note that tax is set to rise from 2018 $108,338,000 to 2019 $114,228,000. This is a 5.5% increase. What happened to the 4% in the 10-year plan? The hidden thumbscrew. On page 4, the revenue comes to $200,818,000. Removing the provincial and federal grants, $52,681,000, reduces this to $148,136,000. This should be further reduced by the transfer of debt money from the reserve of $2,248,000. The net income is really $145,888,000. On page 4, the user charges, licenses and fines come to $27.5 million. They provide vital funds for paying employees' salaries, wages and benefits. These charges, licenses and fines may be increased without debate by council or justification by staff. People are aware that charges have increased astronomically since amalgamation. I know from personal inquiry that the Omimi Emily Recreation Arena is now too expensive to rent by the people who raised the money to build it in the first place. There is an ethical question that must be addressed. We pay our employees very well to work for us. Their job is to process permits, issue licenses and so on. That is what they are hired to do. And then we have to pay yet again for those permits and licenses. The $2,243,000 collected in fines is a huge and astonishing sum. What is it that the good citizens are doing that requires this level of monetary punishment? Staff should provide a breakdown of the breaches of municipal bylaws and explain the amounts of the penalties. We do know that an additional $1,107,000 is collected as penalties and interest on taxes on page 4. I presume that this comes largely from the poorer citizens who have a hard time paying their taxes. So $3,350,000 is the total collected by the city as a punitive measure. Have we become a police state, funded by penalties? It seems likely that people are poorly informed about the city's regulations. Employee complement. We have something like 1,400 employees, with about 650 in staff positions. This is about 3 times as many as prior to amalgamation. The total of wages, salaries and benefits comes to $68,029,000. This is about 60% of the $114,228,000 collected as taxes. We spent $1,097,000 a year on training our staff. This is incomprehensible. The skills required to manage the corporations are very trivial. They were performed with great success by the more fiscally prudent administration that existed before administrations. Very few people had academic qualifications beyond high school. Are we hiring people who are not properly qualified to do the job and require expensive training? If so, then this practice should stop. Council should cut that line from the budget. However, this large expenditure, plus over $1 million in training, is insufficient to run the corporation. We need to bolster the workforce with contract employees. They cost an astonishing $58,393,000. The professional fees alone are $17,091,000. Even the CAO's office, the very mental cortex itself, needs professional aid costing $722,000. Do we really need to do this when we have PhDs and PhD bureaucrats on staff? In reality, our extended staff costs us $116,422,000 to get the work done. This is more than the amount collected from property taxes. The City of Kawartha Lakes is basically a bank. It collects money under duress, takes most of it for itself, and then contracts out the major projects. It, like banks, has rules and regulations. I did carry out some informal discussions with people in the banking business. The impression was that a relatively modest bank could handle the city finances with ease. Our engineering department contracts out work, our legal department brings in professional assistance. The human resources department and the capital assets department are both post-amalgamation inventions. I think the council should explore contracting out the business and personal functions of staff. There are several excellent companies such as ADP who would welcome the business. Conservation Authority. 1. The budget calls for $1,539,000 to be given to the conservation authorities. The amount for the KLCA has increased to $1,429,000. This is about 7% and sweet music to any aspiring bureaucracy. Page 8. 2. The Kawartha Lake Conservation Authority has morphed into a significant bureaucracy, with typically the CAO getting paid a 6-digit salary. 3. The grunt work is still done by volunteers. 4. There is no quantifiable evidence that the water quality is improved or that the fish populations have increased as a result of centralized environmental governance by the KLCA. 5. The KLCA replaced a 100% volunteer organization that did exactly the same job. 6. This is an example of the second law of bureaucracies. All bureaucracies shall support each other. 7. The Kawartha Lakes Conservation Authority has now assumed police-like powers to enter properties without warrants to search for misdemeanors and lay charges. These facts have been featured in several articles in the Ontario Landowners Association magazine. 8. This money will be better used by the various communities along the shoreline. They are already engaged in environmental work. This would create a real dynamic interest in the environment, truly engage the people, and get something done. 9. Note that we already pay $4,142,000 for environmental contract services. Page 5. We also have provincial and federal bodies that are responsible for the environment. 10. This is time to have a referendum. At that time, all the arguments against supporting the Kawartha Lakes Conservation Authority would have a proper hearing. Fleet, etc. The budget for the fleet of vehicles has increased by 20%. The public expects that all materials and equipment from pencils to bulldozers will be used until they have completely exhausted their useful life. The policy of replacing equipment with new vehicles under a short timeline must be stopped. One candidate for council noted that he bought equipment at the City of Kawartha Lakes equipment sale, then immediately used it in a contract for the city. We are spending $456,000 on replacing furniture, which I suspect is better than found in the homes of most taxpayers. Cut this amount. Information technology. This department has a staff of 17 people with salary and benefits costing $1,500,000, yet it still needs to contract out work to the tune of $1,800,000. On page 181, we see the rationale for some expenditure given as IT strategy. That is not enough detail. The council should ask, what is this strategy? The last update to the system cost millions and lost information that I have previously located on the old website. The IT department budget calls for contracted work costing $8,200. Note, when I worked for the Ministry of Education, the whole of the Western region had one IT officer. Library services, pages 46 and 47. In the budget, the salary and benefits of the library system costs us $1,442,000, an increase of $36,659. The lion's share of this amount go to the salary staff of 8. The remaining 16.48 people are part-time employees who, traditionally, have no pension benefits. These are the local librarians who serve us directly. We have 1 full-time supervisory staff person for every 2 part-time real workers. Top heavy administration, or what? Prior to amalgamation, there was no administrative cohort for libraries. A library cannot function without a librarian working on site. A library can function perfectly well without any overseeing executives. The executives are, in economic lingo, a marginal utility. The council should cut this whole thing back to 1 executive with a secretary. All other functions that are of any importance to the customers are done by the local library workers. Page 48 summarizes the revenue and expenses. The total revenue is given as $286,433. The total expenses as $2,192,000. It looks as if the taxpayer must make up the difference of $1,906,000. However, the revenue includes a magical transfer of debt money from the reserves of $63,000, so the real cost of the library system to the taxpayer is $1,969,000. You can see how the debt money in the reserves is used in very ingenious ways by the staff. I can find no entry costing the proposed relocation of the Bobcaygeon Library, a proposal that was rejected in the public meeting. However, there is this entry. BP 1901 953 1901 Building and Property Facilities 953 190111 Bobcaygeon Library Design for Relocation of Library to the Bobcaygeon Service Centre and expansion of capacity to meet growth related needs. So I suspect that, as usual, the staff are judge, jury and executioner. The wishes of the taxpayer are of no account. I am personally infuriated by the overbearing arrogance of the staff making decisions for a highly intelligent, well-informed populace. Missing. Sale of property. The sale of our property provides substantial revenue. I could not find this in the budget. Staffing. There is no policy for reducing the number and cost of staff. This is the single largest cost of the corporation and deserves serious attention. Comments. The city bureaucrats have a vision for themselves and for the city that cannot be sustained by any tolerable tax base. It has been sheer irresponsible folly to assume a huge debt in order to pursue that illusion. It is time for council to tell staff in unmistakable terms that they must tighten their belts, get their heads out of the clouds and their feet firmly back on solid ground. Council must set quantifiable objectives for the staff. I suggest the following. 1. An immediate reduction in expenditures by all departments of 3%. This is to be done without sacking any staff earning less than $80,000 a year or by reductions in any level of service to the public. 2. Make this reduction a requirement of every budget for the next 10 years. Have a 10-year plan based on this premise. 3. Extend the use of all materials, vehicles, computers, arenas, fire halls, etc. until they have reached the end of their useful life and are praised by a panel of citizens. 4. Use Gord James's idea of having committees of citizen act as oversight controllers of all departments. Yours sincerely, Peter Weigang. As you can see, there are some significant areas of concern with this budget and some significant areas that need to be addressed within the budget. And I think you can see quite clearly that if these issues are not addressed, the city is going to go bankrupt. You know, the province doesn't have bottomless pockets, and it seems we have to spend an enormous amount of money to create another bureaucracy to actually apply for some of the grants from the province, as in the Kawartha Lakes Halliburton Housing Corporation. So we really need to address this, because the taxpayer cannot keep on digging in their pocket for fees, fines, tolls and increases in property taxes. And I think down the road you're going to find this is going to be of greater and greater interest to the public, the tax-paying resident, the one where the buck stops. Okay, so as I say, this meeting is on February the 13th. It's going to be probably an all-day affair, but please read the document in the link below. If you have any issues, any questions, you can be a presenter. You just contact the clerk of the council, Kathy Ritchie, and she will put you on the list. And there will also be spaces for people who just show up and want to speak on some of the issues in the budget. So, anyways, in the meantime, this is Steve Clark signing off. Please have a very pleasant week. Like and subscribe below. Comment if you please. And anyway, we'd love to see you at some of our meetings, which are going to be starting up in May, and we will keep you posted on that. You take care. You have a great evening now. See ya.